Today I have a long anticipated guest in Igor Novikov. Igor is a change maker, he's a transformational leader, he is an ambassador of Singularity University in Ukraine. He's actually a former advisor to President Zelensky.
Technology affects us not when it's invented and not even when it goes to market. It's when it starts breaking down old behavioral patterns and starts kind of creating new ones.
Another iteration of this rule: treat people the way they want to be treated.
I'm not an optimist, and unfortunately, if you go through my early keynotes in like 2016, 2017, I actually openly said that like between 2020 and 2025, we're gonna have pandemics, we're gonna have wars.
You're a prolific speaker, and I want to know what are the roots of that?
And you know how they say, like, when you're about to die, your whole life flashes in front of your eyes? Well, I was a teenager. Thank you for inviting me. And by the way, I really hate those like introductions because like I don't see myself having accomplished that much. So whenever people go, he's like a transformational leader, well, maybe, but
we need some kind of an introduction. So definitely, sometimes, those titles might not.
I try and keep them modest, but it's like whenever people start going after everything that you've done, you just like think of yourself like, no, I haven't done that much. So
Well, I'll take this. We'll jump into different sides of your occupations, different sides that you're involved in. To start with, I would like to ask you about the Singularity University, because the things that you're guys doing there are nothing short of impressive. I would want to know what is the mission of Singularity University as a whole and specifically in Ukraine.
Well, first of all, I mean, the Singularity University has been evolving, so it's not what it used to be at the moment. But the whole mission behind this kind of a think tank, an institution, a community, whatever you want to call it, is to prepare and educate as many leaders of tomorrow as possible. Because basically, it started right after a TED talk that Peter Diamandis and Ray Kurzweil gave, and they kind of met backstage and came to a very interesting conclusion that there isn't a single institution in the world that actually studies change. And we're living in a time of change, of like major change. I would say like existential change, kind of that level. So they set up SU. I think it was back in 2008 or 2009. I'm dyslexic, so I can get the numbers wrong. So always double check after me. In fact, always double check. So
Point of advice.
That's one of the rules of thumb for today and tomorrow.
I was going to ask you about for like some habits and double or triple check, right? One of them.
Always check the information, especially in the age of AI and the overabundance of information, I would say. And, in the age of disinformation, hybrid wars and everything. So like always check, always have your own opinion. Never trust anyone blindly. So that's kind of, that would be one of the main rules that I try and follow, and I encourage everyone to as well. So they set up SU. SU initially was very interesting community. Now it's kind of is branched off into communities and corporate education, but Singularity University Kyiv chapter always was a community project. So we kind of set it up to be this like gravitational point for Ukrainian innovation, because like it was all over the place. And in fact, Ukraine is it's a very interesting country. It's like one of the top countries in the world as far as innovations are concerned. So all the financial tech is, blossoming here on one hand. On the other hand, we're always shy of how good we are. So we prefer to sell our brains by a kilo. So outsource everything, and there aren't that many like product and service companies in Ukraine. So all the great minds either leave the country or they basically just join outsource companies that do other people's projects, and that was always a big problem. Plus, as far as our government and our so-called elites are concerned, obviously, that weren't helping either. So we kind of set up, as you put it out there, with a brand that's backed by the likes of Google and NASA and everyone, and it's attracted a lot of attention. And we had two missions. One mission was to educate people and give them enough information about what's really happening in the world so that they can, catch up with the West and all the other competing countries. Our second mission was to build a community around common values and around, collaboration in that innovation field. So we set it up back in 2016. So this year we turned 7. And although Singularity University in the US and globally is evolving more towards corporate education, in Ukraine especially, given the current situation, we stick to what we believe in and kind of follow that community model still. And we had some interesting people go through our programs and keynotes and everything. So one of those being President Zelensky, and the majority of his past and present team in some shape and form went through our programs. But you have to remember one thing, because that's a question I get asked a lot, is if he knows everything that we know, why are some things happening the way they are? We're not a school, we're not a university per se, we don't give diplomas. We have information and knowledge that we share, but what to do with that is up to a person. So I can't really force you to be an agent of change. I can only encourage you to.
Yeah. Well, when you mentioned common values, what are those? Transparency, I assume, and desire to flexibly look at the world.
Look, no. I wouldn't characterize those values as some form of a futuristic visionary goals. I would say it's more to do with the ethics of it. So unfortunately, for a number of reasons, we've taken a couple of wrong turns over the last 20, 30 years when that exponential tech started breaking down the old macro behavioral patterns around the world, and they're setting up this new instability that is turning into new stability. So we kind of, in our community, we just encourage basic ethical things. So not competing fairly, not stealing ideas, but in some shape and form, the basic human values are all over the place. Be that religion, science, or just big corporations. It's just kind of treat people the way that you want to be treated.
And another iteration of this rule: treat people the way they want to be treated. I really like this one.
Yeah, that also works, but it's the common values are, people are over exaggerating when they think that we're some sort of secret community or a bunch of co-conspirators that are ruling the world, the global government or something. No, it's just a community with just a bunch of values, and not that different from all the other decent communities.
I think it's Neil deGrasse Tyson who said, he told a story about his father, and his father was also a scientist. As far as I remember, he said that it's not enough to be right. It's also important to somehow drive real change, put things into action. So is there some kind of hardship in this realm? If people have these ideas, how difficult it is to actually put them in fruition or implement them?
Well, look, first of all, an idea is worthless unless you do something with it, on one hand. On the other hand, once you have that idea, that's you're halfway there already. So like there's no simple answer to this question. As far as technology is concerned, I would probably agree with Peter Diamandis here. I would say that like we're living in the golden era of entrepreneurship. So the money's out there. The smart people there are happy to join you out there. All the ideas are out there as well. So if you set your mind to something, whatever that may be, the new chat GPT or the new drone or even like, reversing aging, that can be done and all the resources are available. That's on one hand. On the other hand, like we as human beings, and let me give you a small disclaimer here. So Singularity University communities, like, is basically we have groups of people who are interested in certain technologies and they have their like own field of interest and study and hobby and business projects. So some people kind of follow the AI branch, some people go into blockchain, some people go into like virtual reality or something. I'm more of a humanist in the sense that this community, I'm more interested in people who are dealing with technology rather than technology itself, because it's at least until and if AGI is possible, so general artificial intelligence, unless and until that is possible, it's the human beings that are creating technology and not the other way around. So and the technology only affects us, actually technology affects us not when it's invented and not even when it goes to market. It's when it starts breaking down old behavioral patterns and starts kind of creating new ones. So for example, iPhone wasn't the first smartphone out there per se, and yet it's that mass adoption led to a macro behavioral change. So you started buying music differently, you started kind of treating people differently, communicating with them differently, and that changed the world, not the actual gadget. So I'm interested in the human side of things, and I can tell you this: I'm really worried about the future because I think we still haven't learned on a macro scale to adapt to all the tsunamis of change that are coming. So because the tech that's coming to market, that's already come to market, and that will be available to us like in the next 5 to 10 years, will change everything, will turn everything upside down, and we'll have to rethink the very basic institutional things that we're so used to. So the employment and the distribution of wealth in the world, our health, our safety, our environment, our business models, our politics, you name it. I mean, all of that is going to change. Like even like social in institutes like marriage, for example. I mean that's already being majorly disrupted by all the tech that's out there, because when marriage first appeared within our society, first of all, the reason for that social institute was different. But secondly, there weren't any like, porn hubs or, Tinders and, you name it, like cheap flights. And, the life expectancy was different as well. It was, 25 years, if I'm not mistaken. So, love till death do us part, that was like in a literal sense. So, and the Social Institute of Marriage is kind of going through a bit of turbulence now, and it's only going to get worse. Just kind of, Salim Ismail, one of our lecturers, is actually given a very good example of that. He said like, well, imagine what's going to happen to the Social Institute of Marriage with a widely available lie detector in your smartphone.
A lie detector.
So
oh my god.
what's that going? Yeah, what's it gonna do to marriage? What's that gonna do to politics, to marketing, to everything? And like, if you think about that, I mean, that tech is not widely available yet, and it's incredibly disruptive. But if you know enough basic stuff about tech that's available to us, it's doable. It's just a mix of sensors, AI, and fact checking and access to information. That's it.
Yeah, it's a matter of what
So
will be adopted.
once that's grown, your life is not going to be the same.
Yeah. And I'm kind of frightened when I hear you speak. For some reason, it doesn't instill a
Yes,
lot of
it
hope,
should be.
because people are curious, and I think you once said at one of your lectures that we survive because of the adaptability. A lot of not the strongest survives. So survives the one that adapts better, right? That's why human beings
Yeah.
survived everyone. But I mean, this is
Well,
scary.
it wasn't me. It wasn't me who said it. It was
It was
Darwin
Darwin.
actually
Yes, you
said
were
it.
quoting Darwin.
Yeah.
Yeah, but let's hope for the best. Maybe those lie detectors won't be heavily adopted by people. For I remember Black Mirror, one of the episodes of Black Mirror. You remember where he put in a chip?
Yeah, I don't like Black Mirror. It's like I always get asked like if
Dark
there's one
futurism.
like film or if there's one series or film that people should watch that resembles the future as far as I know it, it's actually that I think it was BBC's Years and
Mhm.
Years series. That resembles the future that we're kind of seeing, come to fruition at
Yeah.
the moment. Not Black Mirror or
Yeah. All
something.
right.
And luckily, not Terminator. I mean, like one of the funniest discussions that I usually have with my students is everyone, and there's a good reason for it. Everyone seems to be afraid of a hypothetical AGI, general artificial intelligence. And there's a good reason for that because it was Hollywood that kind of sold us on that idea that robots are sooner or later going to take over the world. But that distorts people's understanding of technology. So people are worried and are afraid of Skynet and Terminators. But to be honest, I mean, the main reason to fear general artificial intelligence would be its rationality. And, it doesn't need to launch nuclear missiles, and it won't launch nuclear missiles because it needs to survive as well. What it can do, it can, provoke non-nuclear conflicts. It can suggest formulas for the new drugs that, will seem good on paper, but in reality will kill off most of the human population. It can destroy our global economy. It can do anything it likes, and it doesn't involve like skeleton-looking Terminators and nuclear weapons. I mean that kind of apocalyptic event involving AGI will look nothing like Hollywood shows us. Like seriously, I mean, all AGI needs to do to make you jump out of the window is just kind of
Yeah.
talk to you and just disrupt your life to a point of depression.
Yeah, and they would know when you're at your lowest point somehow.
It would know everything. Like there was a huge scandal about a month ago about privacy in ChatGPT because that thing actually can figure out your personal data, i.e., your location, for example, not based off your IP or something else, but based on the context of things you
Oh my
discuss with it.
god.
So there was one guy from Melbourne who used certain, Australian slang and was describing a certain road juncture without naming it in its conversations with ChatGPT, and ChatGPT actually figured out that where the guy lives.
Yeah.
Not having access to any like geodata or anything like that. And it doesn't surprise me at all because whenever I do lectures about cybersecurity, I always say that it's not the hackers, the IT hackers that we should be afraid of. It's the behavioral hackers because I can break into your iPhone way quicker and easier as a social
Hmm.
scientist uh, than if I were a hacker, like the typical hacker in front of a computer screen. you'll give me your phone, you'll unlock it yourself, and you'll thank me for it. So, and that's the side of potential AGI that we need to fear.
So what's the solution? Should we work more on, yeah, what should we work more on? You said that you're more people-centric type of futurist, right? Should we
But
invest more into psychological safety and stuff of this?
no, there's one sphere that we need to focus on and prioritize like globally, and that sphere is
Education.
education. But unfortunately, knowing what I know about sociology and about history and politics, and the whole track record of the human race, I want to remain an optimist, but I have to be realistic about what's going to happen. It's not going to be an easy process. And like, look, the best hypothetical scenario for us would be to kind of press pause on the evolution of our technology and focus on our society and ourselves, and then kind of figure out that new stability and then continue developing new technology. But one thing you can be certain of as far as the humans are concerned: if there's a shiny button that we can press without thinking, we'll press it sooner or later. So yeah, I'm not an optimist, and unfortunately, if you go through my early keynotes in like 2016, 2017, I actually openly said that like between 2020 and 2025, we're gonna have pandemics, we're gonna have wars, we're gonna have this like major period of global instability, and then by mid 2025, we're gonna see the first glimpses of a new stability. But that doesn't mean that this crap's going to go away, but instead we will either see that we're going towards the world of technological abundance that people like Peter Diamandis hope for, or we're going down that anti-utopian hellhole. And plus there are many potential apocalyptic hellholes. You name it, Hollywood's kind of already said everything about it. So we can go the route of The Day After Tomorrow. We can go the route of Mad Max. We can go the route of Terminator is the least likely one, because it's like it's a funny film, but the real destruction of the human race will look way more boring.
Quick note, guys. As you are watching this episode, and I hope you're enjoying it, I'm trying to grow my channel, and I can see that up to 70% of people who watch this channel remain unsubscribed. If you would like to see more impressive guests and more profound conversations, please subscribe or hit a like button. I'm incredibly grateful for your support, and enjoy the show further. I watched your TED Talk at 2016, I guess, and yeah, you told about the
But
abundance
motivation.
phenomenon and the possible scenarios, and I think that in a way it was prophecy, some kind of, because we're already in. Have you been called a prophet?
That's one thing. Like, actually, two funny things. So, well, first of all, a serious one. I don't have a crystal ball, and like, forecasting is not prediction. It's not some form of like magic. I'm not a seer. Don't have a crystal ball. I can. It's nothing but applied logic. So if you have enough information and if you pigeonhole it correctly, then you can work out the more likely and the less likely scenarios. But that's not magic. But what's really funny, you told me that prophecy. The fact that I study human nature and human psychology and human behavior, the fact that I'm married to one of the best sociologists in the world, and the fact that with Zelensky, I worked a lot on information and disinformation. In theory, if I wanted to start a cult, I have all the ingredients ready, and I can I could start like the new cult, like global cult, but no, we don't have time for that because I have kids and like I want them to grow up in a world where they have a chance of not seeing firsthand what Hollywood has predicted like many years ago.
Well, I've always been a follower of people who, when they speak and I listen. You are one of those people. You're a prolific speaker, and I want to know what are the roots of that. You said maybe we can backpedal a little bit to your biography. You were born in Donetsk. And
Yeah.
tell us about a little bit about how you were growing up and how the life there shaped you to be the person you are today, or maybe something influenced how you are today.
For me, there's a certain event that was a before and then after. But like, in fact, my life was interesting because I was born in Donetsk, but altogether, I think I lived there for like 3 years out of 40, and like a long time ago, I grew up in Kyiv. Then my parents kind of shipped me off to Britain. So I kind of finished school in Leicestershire, and then I went to London School
Oh,
of
really?
Economics in London. So altogether, I think I lived in Britain for like 10
I
years or
also
something.
finished the
So
economics
uh,
faculty, so we're both.
no, no, no. I'm actually a lawyer. I have two majors. So at the LSE, I studied international law, and at LFS, film directing. So I kind of one was for me, one was for like the future that my parents and
Yeah.
well, our parents see the future similar. They extrapolate from their experience, and the greater the change in the world, the more wrong they are about what they see the future of their kids looking like and the advice that they give. But never mind. So I've spent some time in Moscow before everything
Hmm.
started happening. So that was like 2007, 2008. I lived in Athens for a bit. So like I've been all over the place. But one event that kind of shaped me when I was, I think, like 13 or 14. So I was already studying at Uppingham School in Britain. I came to Kiev to see my parents for the holidays, and I got a really bad case of like it was food poisoning mixed with an allergic reaction. So my heart actually stopped in an ambulance, and they had to use a
My God.
defibrillator on me. And I remember like those, I think, like 10 days in the hospital or something like that. I couldn't sleep because it happened at night, and so I was like I was psychologically shaken. And you know how they say like when you're about to die, your whole life
Yeah.
flashes in front of your eyes. Well, I was a teenager, so I kind of understand the background, and the hormones and everything, the whole magic of puberty. But nevertheless, nothing flashed, and I came to this like weird realization that in the hospital, in the middle of the night, that my life is fucking boring. So I decided that whatever life throws at me in the future, I am going to take it and make sure that next time I'm in existential danger as a meat sack with bacterium, i.e. me. I'm going to have something flash. I'm going
Yeah.
to have memories. I'm going to create that. Since then, I kind of, if I could reverse that, that wish that I made that day, I probably would. But I've taken every opportunity that I had, regardless of how crazy it sounded, regardless of how many pivots it would require me to do, and changes to make to my life. Um, I've always accepted that. So my life wasn't, up to this point, wasn't easy, but it was definitely not boring. And the upside of that stupid teenage decision is the fact that without understanding it at first, I've actually trained my adaptability. So I've seen shit, and now I can adapt to it. So like I know what it feels like. I know all the methodologies, all the rules of thumb, and everything. So that's my life. But you've asked me about my spoken word career. No, that I improvise, because when we open Singularity, the way to to develop that project quickly without any marketing budgets or anything was to do a lot of spoken word gigs. So like whatever conference or vlogs or whatever they threw at us, we'd accept. And I was the one who thought, well, I was an ambassador in the chapter, so it was up to me to kind of to speak. And I was petrified of the stage at first, but then I realized that whatever we call talent, whatever we call creativity, can also be logical and mathematical. So spoken word, if you read the book on the art of storytelling, if you read the book, a couple of books about human psychology and human perception of information and arts, if you're willing to figure out a way to work your information into something more entertaining than just a boring keynote where you show slides with numbers on it, people are going to pay attention. If you adapt your lingo, your slang, and your approach to the audience, if you actually get off your ass and do some research about the crowd that's going to be listening to you tomorrow, that's what makes all the difference. And it was really funny because Singularity is self-financed, so we've never taken any money from the mothership. And whenever we launched competitions, and whenever we needed money, I figured out that the best way would be to do just corporate spoken word. And we did a very interesting experiment many years ago. I think it was year 2, year 3 of Singularity. 1 month I've decided to accept every single presentation and keynote offer that I got given, paid once, and we actually made over $70,000 in 1 month just from me.
Oh, really?
Speaking on stage.
Okay, nice gigs.
Yeah. So yeah, that. But look, it sounds interesting. It sounds incredible, but people want to be entertained, especially in the world of overabundant information, because we adapt to it. So in a sense, we're emotionally scarred now. It's we've adapted. Our level of tolerance of what used to tickle us before has gone up exponentially as well. So regardless of the sphere of information, so whether it's straight up entertainment, whether it's pornography or anything, everything, we've adapted. We with that proverbial frog that's already boiling, and the temperature in that bowl where it's going to boil alive is near boiling point at the moment. So now it's not enough to just be entertaining. You need to know a bit more about the intricacies of storytelling and human psychology if you want to be successful in that field. If you notice, there aren't that many new global showbiz phenomena anymore. Taylor Swift, I would say, was one of the last ones. And now that there is no new Metallica. I mean, there are good bands. I mean, there are bands that sell out arenas, but there are no more legends, no more global undisputable and undefeated champions in show business. Why? Because we've decentralized everything, we've democratized everything, and there's simply too much competition, too much on offer for your attention. And attention is actually human attention. It's the only resource that we are yet to exponentially grow. So it's a scarce resource, and there isn't much that we can do about it. So if you think about it, human attention stays at pretty much the same level that it will always stayed on. In fact, I would say it's going down. We're getting dumber in a sense because of that overabundance of information, and the availability and the frequency and the scale of that informational wave is exponential, and it's already hit the curve. It's doubling at a noticeable rate now. And because of that, if I had to name one of the most disruptive factors in the world, that would be it. It's nothing to do with tech that we have. It's nothing to do with social institutes being disrupted. It's all about information. The most dangerous technology is not nuclear weapons, is not even CRISPR or any other digital biology magic wands that will allow us to fuck around with DNA. I would say it's the internet. It's gadgets. It's like the thing. I even like one of my corporate clients has asked me for help with like an op-ed, an article to I think Washington Post or something. And I suggested this notion that the thing that's standing um, between us and our survival as a species is the proverbial cats and cat memes of Instagram. So instead of like saving us and saving our future, we're looking at cats and dogs on the Instagram. And like it's incredibly funny. I mean, like out of all the doomsday scenarios, you'd never think that a cat meme or a monkey farting and then smelling its finger is going to be what's going to bring down the glorious human race, but it is, and I think we deserve it. I think like look, I think we're so narcissistic in our approach that we're on top of the food chain. It's undisputable and everything that we deserve to die because of fucking cat
Igor,
memes.
how do we absorb and learn information then? Because you said that the demand for well prepared speakers who do a proper research and everything is through the roof. But at the same time, the attention span is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Where do we learn how to be sharp thinkers? How do we do that?
Well, let's specify your question. So, because information is also a marketplace, so we're talking about supply or demand. So, you as demand, what is your question about what you need to do to kind of to spend your attention in a more
It's a
efficient
good
manner, or is that
clarification.
question of if you're supply, how do you break through that
Let's take
wall of
both
information?
ways. For me as a creator, for me someone who wanna
Yeah.
um, make change, right, and maybe also give speech or become media persona, and for me as a consumer, because as much as I want to stay away from the overabundance of information, oversaturation, I'm still being impacted by this shit everywhere.
Well, let's begin with us as humans. So, if we want to be more rational and more prepared and deal with information and disinformation and misinformation
Okay.
that's coming at us more efficiently, I would say that first of all, digital detox is a must now, and digital detox is it's not as simple as people think. So they think it's just like locking your gadget away for like 3 days to hear birds sing, but it's not as simple as that because information is a bit like heroin. So if you don't inject that shit into your veins for 3 days and survive it and inject yourself on the fourth, nothing's going to change. You're still an addict. So you have to rethink the whole methodology of how you deal with information and what information you need and don't need in your life. So, but that's a subject of a very long conversation or even an academic course. We have one actually on that. But as far as like creators are concerned, um, let me start from afar. So I as as a primary global ambassador of Singularity University, and that meant back in the day that I'm actually not limited by my city chapter, Kyiv, or even Ukraine. I'm a global ambassador, so I can tell you this. I've seen and dealt with many startups, like countless startups. Some have become unicorns, some have died. So, but I've seen shit, as they say. So, and I've developed this methodology for myself to quickly evaluate, whether a startup can be successful in the
Okay.
long run, and I call it a genie test. So, like the proverbial genie from the lamp, so that grants you
Okay.
wishes. So, so instead of asking them how they're going to deal with whatever scarcity related things that they can encounter along the way as a startup, so why are you going to succeed? How are you going to deal with the lack of funding, or what if the competition destroys you and everything? Instead of asking scarcity based questions, I asked them one simple abundance based question. So say you rub that lamp, you get a proverbial genie, he or she or they, welcome to the 21st century, grants all the wishes for you. So describe your company in 5 years in a world where everything goes your way. You got all the money that you need, you got all the employers, the brains that you needed, or your competition just jumped off a cliff, so there's no
You are
competition,
the
nothing.
CEO
The
of all
world is,
CEOs.
the world is yours. Describe your company in detail in 5 years in that world. And it turns out that most startups are so focused on that scarcity related, like, overcome short-term plans, that they don't have a vision of where they want to be if everything goes their way. And I don't want to deal with a startup that doesn't have a vision. So the reason I told you about the Genie test, you've asked me about how to be successful and well known in the world of overabundance of information in a very competitive sphere, and probably the most competitive sphere now in the world. First of all, same approach. You have to look ahead and have a clear vision of who you are and where you want to be. Secondly, as far as the show business is concerned, you have to clearly see who your target audience is. So you need to understand the people that you're targeting now more than ever. So I want to be Taylor Swift, and I want to be globally known and make billions. Is great, but you have to start somewhere. So you need to figure out who are those different circles of your general audience are, and you have to adapt to their wishes. You need to penetrate their attention bubble, right? So you need to understand your target audience. Secondly, you need to understand the trends. Like I spoke with Brad Paisley yesterday, the famous country singer, the Grammy winning country singer. He's actually going to be on. We're filming on the 4th of Monday, so Brad Paisley is actually going to be on the Jimmy Fallon show tonight. And I asked him to mention Ukraine, so we spoke yesterday. And Brad is not getting younger, and I'm not getting younger. So we had this really interesting conversation about how we adapt to the world of Gen Z and Gen A, right? So the people who don't really know who he is, and to whom the stuff that I'm describing is their everyday life. So and Brad is doing a collaboration with Post Malone, and I suggested to him, I go have you seen those viral reels of AI singing different famous songs with other artists' voices, Metallica singing Russian songs, and Cartman from South Park singing
deep fake technology or something.
Vocal deep fakes. And I go we should train an AI to sing random songs with Brad Paisley's voice. And I said it to Brad, and then that way we can pick an audience that we want to appeal to. So if Brad Paisley's voice does a Taylor Swift song, that will make him known to that'll make the Taylor Swift crowd kind of wonder who the hell is that old dude who's from West Virginia who sings country music, right? And so on and so forth. So you need to figure out the target audience. And I would say that unless you've got it planned out and mapped out and verified by people who know what they're talking about, you should move ahead as a potential influencer and everything, because everything else is just a question of luck. And if you're okay with gambling, if you're okay with you flipping a coin, fair enough. But if you want to approach it with some form of guarantee of success, you need to be scientific about it. So target audience. Then every trick of the trade you should use. I started speaking like Yoda there. Week of the trades. Use you must. So basically, look, storytelling is nothing. Well, it has a lot to do with talent and art and everything. But at the end of the day, you as a human being, your emotions are ruled by neural modulators in you. So if you know how to trigger different biochemical responses in the human body with information, with visual, with any cognitive stimulation, then you can
Appeal
plan
to
ahead.
emotions.
So
Just right through the rational
yeah,
part of the brain, pretty much.
yeah. Because like before you before you can afford yourself that level of empathy, loyalty, and trust with your audience, where you can be rational with them, you're competing on an emotional level. Because like everything now, is pretty much got emotions as the foundation. Like even like the era of like normal news has ended. So now like even the most respectable media outlets are going after your emotions with clickbait, with everything. So you can't afford to be rational with if you want a large enough audience. So you need to manipulate the same way that everyone else does, but then kind of build that empathy, loyalty, and trust, and use it for the greater good. So
Tell me
that's kind
about
of
the
that's the magic.
creative the Rick Rubin's book, the art, the creative act, I think it is. He argues that every human being is creative. Well, what lies within creativity? What why? Because you spoke to the matter that people choose either hedonism or like status game, and there's always a sacrifice. So if you choose to be, I don't know, like a CEO, if you want to make a lot of money, you are sacrificing what you call to be arts, right? Or I think.
You, no, you're wrong there. You don't have
Mhm.
to sacrifice anything. You need to find the balance, and you need to kind of adapt whatever you're doing, whatever drives you, to a point to where you're whole, and you kind of you get everything that you wanted to. But no, sacrifice only happens if you don't understand the underlying rules, or if you don't understand how motivation works. So you don't need to sacrifice everything. And like as far as creativity is concerned, you're not sacrificing art, you're not sacrificing creativity, because if you have to sacrifice it, that means you just don't understand it.
So it
You
is
don't understand how
possible
it works.
to
Because
pretty much.
like like are you a talented musician? Not in the sense of your mechanical skills, i.e., playing an instrument, but can you write a song that will be liked by other people, regardless of who you are? Yes. You know why? Because if you have
Mhm.
taste, you have
Yeah.
creativity. And like in the era of generative AI, i.e., chat GPTs, mid journeys, and everything, like you don't have to create, you need to prompt and choose.
Yeah.
So you have to learn to like shit. Let's put it this way. So if you want to write a song, AI can do everything for you. It could write drum parts, it could write like chord progressions, it could sing for you using your voice, a deepfake clone of your voice. It can do anything. It could write text, it could rhyme text, whatever. One thing it cannot do, and one thing that makes you human still up to this point slightly more superior to artificial intelligence, is the fact that you can afford to choose. You have taste, you have creative visions, you have abstract
Yeah.
mentality, you know what you want.
Well,
And that's, if you want to be creative, that's the skill that you need to develop. Just like the genie test, you have to learn to be a mini visionary in your life. So you need to see the end result. And in the linear world of the 20th century, we kind of got used to kind of working from 9 to 6, not from zero to a
yeah, that's a
result.
good point.
And that's one of the habits that we need to break quickly if we want to survive the 21st
I
century.
think this entire schedule based work, it should become obsolete, but unfortunately there are too many people who like the control. it I
Like
couldn't
no,
break away
it's like that's that's one of the things that I'm kind of doing my best to educate people about. Like, there's no excuse. Nothing is impossible. Like, whatever is impossible is contained in, like, chemistry, physics, and biology textbooks from seventh grade. And even that might not be impossible. Everything else is completely possible. Like, the walls are breaking down. In fact, we're reaching that weird opportunity equality whereby, if you have access to the internet, if you have a gadget, you can influence
Yeah.
1 billion people, or all the people, the majority of the people. So everything else is just an excuse. It and the matter of, like, your desire to do or not to do something. That's it. But, like, one of the things we need to do urgently is to get rid of, like, that trait whereby we just kind of excuse ourselves from even trying. Like, one of the biggest lessons I had in life, that was, like, back in the day when I lived in London. Without telling you a very long story, it so happened that I spent half a day entertaining an Oscar-winning director, a very famous one. So we're sitting drinking coffee on Shaftesbury Avenue, and basically I asked him, because I was a kid and, like, I was always fascinated with Hollywood, and I wanted to direct movies, and, like, I had visions of different, like, stories and everything. So I asked him, like, how do I become you? Like, how do I make it in Hollywood? How do I win an Oscar? How do I get an opportunity to create, without all the limitations of, like, being 20 and being nobody? And that guy just told me probably the wisest thing that I've ever heard. So I finished asking my question. He kind of turned my head towards the window. He pointed at the street, and he goes, like, well, in those, like, 20 seconds that it's taken you to ask that question, I would argue that at least 3 or 5 people more talented than you and I combined have walked by this window.
Oh.
Yet, yet none of them are gonna make it. And you know why? Because they're never going to try. It's like, it's the paradox of a beautiful woman, right? So, if a woman is, like, as they say in the US, is a 10, model looking, old men are, like, breaking their necks looking at her in the street, most likely she's alone.
Yeah.
You know why? Because, men are just too insecure and too shy to even talk to her. They're afraid of her. She's better than they can do. That she's better than they can achieve. It's impossible. It's that fucking word, impossible. The corniest crap that I've seen, but it actually works. I've seen a meme that turns the word impossible to I'm possible. And, like, even that corny shit is better than just kind of sitting there and scratching your cheek and just going, like, nah, it's not.
So we are creators of pretty much our destiny, right? And not we're not, like, looking at the circumstances.
Some people think we live in a
Okay,
simulation.
let them think that. I'm not opposed.
I might be one of the people who are agnostic but leaning towards that particular hypothesis.
Well, even if that's a simulation and some superior minds are looking at how we're going to unfold this life, it's still
Doesn't have to be a superior mind. Like, look, if one last thing, if you want to understand where the simulation theory is coming from. So let's say in the next, like, 30 to 50 years, we don't destroy ourselves, don't destroy a planet, and you can live for a very, very long time, if not forever. And, like, you've tried everything, and you can create a simulation that's indistinguishable from reality. Wouldn't you, at some point, try and do that? Wouldn't you simulate you in different scenarios? Probably would. So it might not be superior beings, it could be you.
So pretty much it could be us just living forever, playing a game or something.
Yeah, it could be me, for example, kind of having lived through many scenarios, just kind of going, okay, fuck it. Now you're going to be living in Ukraine in 2023, seeing those stupid drones and missiles, and, like, seeing the verge of potential AGI, and, like, in the most turbulent and scary period of human history, Here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna go and advise Zelensky for a year and a half, and then you're gonna stay in Kyiv and see if the Russians take it and defend it. And if they don't take it, see if you can do enough to warrant a fucking caliber missile hitting your house in Kyiv. If you do enough damage, they're gonna get pissed off and strike your house or something like that. It all sounds incredibly crazy, but doesn't it sound like a simulation? At least somewhat. So one thing I can promise you, I'm definitely not going the Elon route. So I'm not gonna lean right. I'm not gonna lean right and go absolutely crazy.
Tell me about your perception of Elon and how has it changed over the years?
Look, I can see where it's coming from. Certain irrational things and most of the things that I disagree with can be to do with different substances, let's put it this way, or with certain psychological issues. But as far as his system of values and beliefs is concerned, I disagree with it, but I fully understand that he's what you call a freedom of speech absolutist. And if you think about it, do we believe in freedom of speech? Yes. On the other hand, am I allowed to say anything and everything, even if it can cause damage, if it can cause a human to lose his life, something like that? No, there are obviously limitations to all the freedoms that we kind of award ourselves. But he's an absolutist, so he's a black or white guy. So there's either a complete freedom of speech. He can say anything he wants to, regardless of how fucking stupid it is, and damage and destroy, and potentially harmful. And if he can't say it, it's not freedom of speech. That's his kind of view, and a lot of things he does is to provoke that particular conversation.
Thank you so much for the conversation, Igor. It was a bliss.
No problem, no problem. And let's hope I'm wrong about many things, but time will tell.